If you could be anywhere, doing anything, where would you be, doing what, right now? A simple question, yet so difficult to answer. You're looking for purpose. You've heard hundreds of ways to find it. Without purpose, your life is meaningless, pointless, empty. The universe is billions of years old. You might live a few thousand days. Life is fleeting. You can't move stars, planets, moons, or even mountains. You have no noticeable impact on the fate of the universe. Even on this tiny planet, you probably won't make the history books. All this makes life pretty small and meaningless. What's the point if nothing lasts much longer than the few short breaths of your own brief existence? Most folks can't answer that question. We live lives of quiet desperation, working jobs we neither love nor hate, coming home to a cold and empty apartment to eat leftover pizza while numbly playing video games. Or maybe to a family we've built, because that's just what we're supposed to do. Is that really all there is? Get up, go to work, just sort of surviving? It's totally normal to feel lost, hopeless even. Fortunately, there's an alternative. No matter what you've been told, the purpose of life is not a matter of opinion or of individual taste. Your purpose is universal, regardless of circumstance, location, or personality. There's one single purpose to every human life, and this is how to find it. I got a vivid taste of what it means to be purpose-driven at just 18. It came from the most unlikely source. It was 1970, and my neighbor, Charlie, a 29-year-old bus driver, invited me to play poker with his bus driver friends. Afterwards, I sat on the sofa with one of Charlie's friends. He was a bloated, unhealthy-looking guy in his early 30s, with a face already ravaged by drinking. He was also a Vietnam veteran, and he quickly had me riveted with one gut-wrenching story of combat after another. His tour ended when a mortar round hit the edge of his foxhole. He woke up in the hospital, deaf and blind, and he described what it was like to live for weeks in silent darkness before he finally began to recover. There was no bravado in any of this. In fact, what made it so trippy was his utter lack of emotion. It was like he was reading from the newspaper.
I miss Vietnam. I'd go back there tomorrow if they'd let me. You don't get it, do you? Listen, I was alive in Nam, man. There's no gray in Nam, man. People talk about intimacy, love, trust. Bullshit. They're dead already and they don't know it. You want intimacy? You want love? You want trust? Go to Nam, man. Go to Nam. Guys who know. One heartbeat, hanging their asses out every fucking minute of every fucking day, proving it. I was one of them, man. I was one of them. There's only one fucking thing in Nam, and every fucking thing is that fucking thing. No hesitations, no doubts. Just a single point of white-hot intensity called life. And when you're living that, you're there, man. You're alive, and you know in your gut what life's supposed to be. This is all nothing but phony cardboard bullshit. Look at me, man. I'm a bus driver with a wife who loves me. Yeah, she loves me all right. She loves me so much that she's sending me to beautician school so we can open up a beauty parlor. A beauty parlor, for Christ's sakes! But the joke's on her, man. The joke's on her. Well, she don't know it, but I've been dead for years. I died in Nam, man. They just shipped me home without my body bag.
Yeah, I felt sorry for that vet, but I envied the hell out of him too. He saw something important. He paid an incredible price, but what I saw in him was the raw possibility of what life could be, what life's supposed to be. Somebody said God's both terrible and fascinating. God's like some terrible train wreck. He's so awful, but you can't look away. That Vietnam vet was awful. He was so terrible, but he filled me with awe. He was like some kind of prophet, a half-mad, alcoholic, bus-driving, burning bush, insisting I do something with my life. But do what? The vet had glimpsed, if only for a moment, what it meant to be truly alive and filled with unshakable conviction and purpose. When he was fighting in Vietnam, nothing else mattered except his fellow warriors. The vet's single-minded purpose was having their backs. He wasn't concerned with winning the war or even surviving a battle. His complete and utter focus was on making sure he never let his buddies down. When he returned from the war, the vet couldn't commit to his wife's beauty parlor. Life was all hollowed out, and there was no single point of white-hot intensity to be found. So, sadly, the vet felt like he'd already died. What lived on was just an empty alcoholic shell. So what's the lesson? I'm certainly not advocating for war or contempt for your spouse. I also don't recommend becoming an alcoholic. What that veteran experienced in Vietnam is something that eludes most of us for our entire lives. Total devotion to purpose, to something much bigger than ourselves. In Vietnam, the vet lost his selfish ego entirely. He no longer cared if he lived or died. All that mattered was the man to his left and the man on his right. That's the secret to purpose no one's telling you. The purpose of life is not a deeply personal and unique thing you must discover. The purpose of every human life, whether we realize it or not, is to be transformed from a selfish into a selfless person. This purpose is what made the vet feel so alive in Vietnam, when he selflessly cared only about the others around him, and its absence is what made him feel dead when he came home. The good news is you don't need to go to war or find the perfect career to live a purpose-driven life. You can live your purpose in any place with any job around any people. So what can you do to find your own all-consuming purpose? How do you transform yourself from a selfish into a selfless person? There are 3 steps you need to take to live with purpose and begin the process of transformation. Step 1, change your thoughts and turn your attention to others. In this step, you'll have to consciously force yourself to think about others. Self-consciousness is a painful state. When we are self-conscious, we invariably get in our own way and fail to perform. Instead, we're only truly happy when we forget ourselves. This state of forgetting yourself is often called flow, though it has many names. You don't find flow by self-consciously thinking about it. Achieving flow means turning your attention outward, toward others instead. This is not easy at first. You'll be constantly reminding yourself to think of others, to have more empathy, and to stay personally detached during tough emotional trials. Practice analyzing your thoughts wherever you are, whether you're sitting at home or right after walking into a party. Are you busy wondering if you have something stuck in your teeth? Are you anxious about going to work tomorrow? Are you hoping that people like you? Intentionally acknowledge and then shift these thoughts from selfish to selfless ones. Ask yourself what those around you might need. Is anyone else fidgeting or looking uncomfortable? Is there something nice you can bring for your coworkers tomorrow, like hot coffee? Could someone here use a glass of water or a friendly smile? This might feel regressive and counterproductive at first, as you'll temporarily become even more self-aware as you learn to focus on others. But when thinking of others becomes effortless, however, it will all be worth it. Step 2, act on your new selfless thoughts. Once you're in the habit of thinking about others, actions become obvious. Living selflessly is defined as a vast number of selfless thoughts producing a vast number of small, selfless acts. Individually, they seem insignificant, but their aggregate impact is enormous. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not a choice, but a habit. In the end, selflessness is not something you learn. It is what and who you must become. You no longer do selfless things. You are now a selfless person. And the more selfless you are, the happier and more successful you will be. A few years after meeting the Vietnam vet, I discovered the magical power of selfless service myself. I was in Cleveland, Ohio, jump-starting spiritual communities on local college campuses on behalf of my Zen teacher, Richard Rose. I was living with 4 impoverished fellow Zen students in the back of a drafty, run-down old ice cream parlor, an ice cream parlor that Rose insisted was like living in a piano box. Our humble ashram had precious little heat, and I slept in a sleeping bag on wooden cargo pallets cushioned with carpet padding. The bathroom was frigid, and the piano box's pre-owned fridge was tottering on its last legs. I worked long hours installing carpet for minimum wage to make ends meet, and I spent my evenings calling group members with meeting reminders, putting up scads of posters, or leading Zen meetings. Day after day, I relentlessly lived like this, and, truth be told, I never worked harder, lived simpler, or felt happier in my entire life. I discovered that the more you throw yourself selflessly into something worth doing, the easier it becomes to forget yourself. Enter flow, be successful, and live happily. Step 3, have faith that your selfless acts will come back around. The scariest part of serving others is uncertainty. If you try to become selfless, you may fail. I had to face this fear on one of my lengthy sojourns as a monastic guest at Mepkin Abbey, home to a community of silent Trappist monks. One cold and rainy Christmas Eve, a monk named Brother John skipped a rare holiday party in the cozy monastic refectory. Instead, I stumbled upon him standing under an umbrella in the icy rain just outside the refectory door. Stunned, I said, "Brother John, what are you doing?" "I'm here to walk those who forgot their umbrellas back to their rooms," he calmly replied. And with that, we set off together toward my room on that frigid Christmas Eve under that shared umbrella. I was awestruck and terrified by Brother John. Could I ever become so naturally and effortlessly selfless? Could you? Being selfless sounds simple, but it's not easy. Training yourself to think of others and having the strength to serve them without expecting anything in return is incredibly difficult. Even if you succeed, you never know how people will respond. Will they take advantage and leave you with nothing? Will you miss out on many of life's selfish pleasures and opportunities? Will you end up depressed and cynical? Most terrifying of all, will you dedicate yourself to the hard labor of selfless service without ever finding that inner spark of eternity that makes it all worthwhile? I struggled with this fear for years, and I'm so blessed that I did. Most people get purpose all wrong. They think it's about finding the right career, home, or specific mission. Instead, your purpose and the purpose of every human life is to be transformed from a selfish to a selfless person. It's possible to live with purpose and find genuine success in tasks and places most people would consider menial or routine, like offering an umbrella to an umbrella-less guest like me. You don't need a great war or Sigma grind set hustle mentality. You don't even need a career you love. You live your purpose of becoming a selfless human being by authentically serving others without expecting anything in return. Serving others selflessly is tough. It doesn't feel like we'll get anything back in return. You must go for it anyway. Have faith that through your selfless actions, you will become the selfless person you were meant and designed to be. When you achieve your transformation and live out your purpose, you'll finally know how to answer that difficult question we started with. If you could be anywhere, doing anything, where would you be, doing what, right now? I'd be right here, right now, doing this.